Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Nick Talks. This episode's amazing guest is Josh Dhillon. He's a YouTuber. You need to check out his account. I'll put the details in the description. Go subscribe now. And by the end of this video, you'll want to subscribe as well. So, first of all, thank you, Josh, for coming on this episode.
No, thank you for having me. It's honestly a pleasure. Whenever I get an email from somebody telling me to come on their podcast, I always jump in. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, because I love talking to people that have similar worldviews or may do, because it's a very isolating time, I feel, to have different political views.
No, yeah. And it's been like that for a while now. And I'm a bit like you. Anybody who contacts me and says, will you come on this radio show? Will you come on this podcast? The answer, I think, has always been 100% yes, of course, because I want to talk to people. I actually want to talk to people as well who disagree with me, because I don't want an echo chamber. I want people to hear my point of view and for them to be able to critique it and maybe even show me where I'm going wrong, because I'm not on this journey to be proven right. I'm on this journey for knowledge and the truth. And if people can help me find knowledge and truth, then I would appreciate it off anybody.
Yeah, I think that's actually an issue we live in today. It's just a one big echo chamber. People see an opinion and then they just repeat it without actually doing any of their own research. So they think it's true. And then when you question them, they get all agitated and they start screaming and shouting. So
Well, we've seen that recently when you ask anybody, what's a woman? And it's like, how dare you ask me this question? How dare you? And it's like, it's one of the most simplest questions you can ask somebody. Like, what is a cat? What is a dog? What is a man? What is a woman?
if you spoke to people 50, 60 years ago and you said to them, these are the questions we would be asking, I think they'd be in shock, to be fair.
They would. They would. Right. My first question, or my first discussion point I wanted to talk about was, I'm 54. You're in your early 20s. Has the world always been mental in your lifetime? Because I remember a time when the world wasn't mental.
I don't personally remember a time when it wasn't mental. I think, sorry about that. It's when you develop your own opinion, you then see how mental the time or the times you've been living in. And I sort of call it, I've said it in a video before, it's like a Santa Claus syndrome. You know, when you're young and you're brought up with this idea that Santa Claus exists, and then you see your mum wrapping the presents or something, you can never go back to believing in Santa Claus. And if you do, you're just denying reality. And that was the situation for me. You see what's really going on and you realize we've been in that time, or it's been progressing into that time for a long, long time. You just don't know it, because I feel like in this country, especially the UK, we're brought up in a more left-leaning way, as people don't want to admit, but I just think we are. So to have different opinions isn't really a known thing. And when you do have a different opinion, people just shout at you, you're right wing, etc., etc. That's what I experience and have experienced in my life. And I'm only young and you're a lot older than me. So, I can't imagine what you've gone through with having different political opinions and certain things.
Yeah, I think for me, the world changed, or our country changed after the Second World War. By the end of the Second World War, the British Empire was gone. We went from, a world power to bankrupt. We had to have loans off America. You know that the money we borrowed off America to save us in the war and after the war, we only finished paying back something like 10 years ago. That's how long it took us to get out of debt for the war years.
I think I actually remember that being mentioned when I was younger, to be fair. That just rings a bell.
Yeah, so that's how much we had to borrow to save the country. And then since the 50s onwards, we've had this left-wing progressivism. I'm writing a book at the moment about feminism, and I put most of the blame of this wokeness and the issues we have today, I put it all at the feet of feminism. And my book will probably come out end of the year, and I explain how that happens. But as a younger person, and life is always, since you've woken up from the matrix, you've seen that the world's mental. I put a lot of, again, you won't know this because of your age, as in, I remember a time pre-social media, pre the internet. So all these ideas have been here for a long time,
Oh, really?
but social media and the internet has sped it all up. It's allowed crazy people from different corners of the world to start sharing these mental ideas, and them to, in an echo chamber, think, well, they believe this and so do I. And I've just read this, this article online that they never would have found if it wasn't for the internet. And it's been like this validation circle being online, and I think that's a major part of the problem.
I definitely agree. I think there is an issue today where people just want to mean something in society, whatever that may be. And I feel like progressive movements are an easier route into that. People are told their life gets better once you join these sort of movements. And we live in an attention economy, basically, where people thrive and live off attention. So if they can get easy attention by saying certain things, changing genders, changing their pronouns, etc., then they will do it. And if you question that, you're the bad one, you're the evil one, which doesn't really make any sense to me. Because once a lot of them leave an echo chamber, once they leave it, I think they realize the world isn't how they see it. Because I don't think the world really cares about the stuff they believe in. They think it does, but in reality, I don't think it does. So you're setting people up for a harsh reality that the world will give them, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the world's a very harsh, unfair place. It always has been and it always will be. And if you cocoon yourself with these ideas, these platitudes, these memes that we can all be pink and fluffy, we can all sing Kumbaya and we can all get along, then you're in for a big shock once reality smashes you in the face. And if you have a country like that, that country is wide open for invasion, of being wiped off the face of the earth. And it goes back to that old saying, strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. And I think where we're on that cycle, I'm sure it's towards the end somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly where we are. But bad times are coming.
I think we're in the bad times. You see what's going on in the world, cost of living, etc., etc. I think there is a problem with masculinity being stifled out of men, especially at a young age, especially in school. The education system, I think, is really designed for girls and women, and it hinders boys, because in school, if they shout too loud, they say something the teacher doesn't like, they get told to be quiet, sit down, and sent outside the classroom. So when you breed a feminine society, this is the result of it. Boys want to be more feminine. They don't stand up for anything, and then they allow everything. Like in different countries, they're protesting everywhere. France protests every day. We have situations going on in our country and nobody does anything. Why is that? I still don't get it, because like I don't understand how many times people need to get screwed over by people before they realize they don't have your best interests at heart. And I think if men were more masculine and stood for things as they did 50, 60 years ago, I think maybe we wouldn't be in this situation as much.
I completely agree. I don't think we would. I'm not sure protests and demonstrations work. They don't work in France, really. It gets press attention, but it gives the outcry. I think we're a lot more reserved in this country, which I'm not saying is a good thing or a bad thing. Um, but you're right. I keep telling people all the time, we live in a democracy. And if our politicians are making the wrong choices and are ruining the country, which they are, because it's always about short termism, no one's ever planning for the future. It's always about how can I get elected in 3 years' time. But we live in a democracy, and the ultimate people to blame if you have a government doing the wrong things is called us. We need to take some responsibility ourselves as the electorate, and we need to start looking about how we can get rid of the politicians we don't like. And just because we don't like them, that doesn't mean they're the wrong politicians, because we may be a minority of one or a minority of 100 or 5,000. It doesn't matter. We're still a minority. So it's about looking at our system and using the system we have to make the change we want. That's how we got Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, from a young person's point of view, when Brexit happened, it was the most racist thing that ever happened, right? But I actually think now, if it was done properly, it would have been a good thing, because they made all these promises about immigration, etc., the NHS, and none of them have been delivered. I would actually argue we're in a worse position now than we were before Brexit. I don't know, maybe if that's controversial to say.
I would agree with you. We are in a worse position, but I don't think it's got anything to do with Brexit. It's to do with we'd still be in the same situation now, because this is a world thing going through. The promises about Brexit, the promises to the NHS were kept. The NHS got all that money and has got even more money than it was getting before Brexit. The immigration is where, I mean, I can't believe it's a Tory government have really let the side down, because we still don't control our borders. We're still part of the European Court of Human Rights. we're in a worse position, as in we're not part of Europe anymore, but we're still being partly run by Europe. It's the worst of both worlds. And again, that comes down to our politicians who we vote in.
And then I would argue if these issues weren't here, which the politicians indirectly or directly create, would we need politicians in the first place? Because I think we've placed this, I don't know, this attachment to these politicians that they're going to save us. Someone's going to come in and save everybody, when I feel like these politicians create the issues, so we think we need saving.
To a certain extent, but humans are a tribal creature. And as a tribal creature, we need tribal leaders. And that's why we invented gods. That's why we invent things like pop stars and celebrities, because as a human, we're always looking, we want to look up to something else, something to copy, something to imitate. So politicians are the modern version of kings, modern versions of tribal leaders and of gods. But they need to be more accountable, and they're not. And the reason why they're not held accountable is because the vast majority of people are sheep. Vast majority of people will go along with whatever seems to be the fashionable thing of the time, the thing that's going to keep them safe, and they're not going to put their head above the parapet. Hence why we go through these phases, right-wing phases, left-wing phases, because people will just follow what they think is the winning ideology at the time.
I don't think people, especially my age, I don't think they really care at the minute. I don't think they really care till they reach in their 30s, 40s. Even then, I still don't think people care, because we're plagued by all of these distractions, whether it's TV shows, even sports, social media. They're all distractions. And I feel like they're purposely there to distract people, because if people weren't as distracted as they are now, maybe certain people would wake up to certain things that are going on. And these last 2 years have proven if they can get away with what they've done, they can get away with absolutely anything.
Yeah, I mean, and this has been documented in history. If you look at the Roman Empire in Rome, it was called the circus, it was called the games. That's why the emperors would spend so much money on the games, because it was distraction for the people. And what they didn't want was the people talking to each other and going, my life's crap. Well, you're not doing that when you're shouting for your teams and you're watching gladiators kill each other. It's exciting for the day. So those distractions are true. You know, clever politicians will distract you. And if you look at throughout history with dictators, almost every country run by a dictator is at war with somebody, because a dictator wants their populace looking at an outside enemy. Because if they're not looking outside, they're looking internal, and the enemy internal is a dictator. So leaders are always having these distractions, creating these distractions to keep their populace under control.
And with the situation with wars, I feel like we're always told a war is going on. And I'm pretty sure George Orwell put that in his book. I think when we're told there always has to be a war going on, because we always have to feel like we're in impending doom, and we have to live in a state of fear.
Climate change, that's the West's war at the moment.
Climate change, it's a funny one, because the people, I mean, I wouldn't sit here and say I don't believe in it, or I do. I just question how it's being used and how it will be used in the future. But you say to people now, I'll go downstairs to my family, like, oh, I don't believe in it. They're like, what? You don't believe in climate change? And I feel like the more we try and scare people with that, like I saw a American politician, I can't remember her name, but her son woke up with a nightmare because of climate change. And parents are telling their kids all about this stuff. Like, that person must have told their son how dangerous this thing is going to be, when really I don't think any of us will notice any changes in our lifetime.
I don't think we'll. I mean, climate change is real, as in the climate's changing. But,
Oh yeah, for sure.
But the climate's never stopped changing. That's why we have polar bears. Polar bears used to be brown bears, but they adapted over time because the climate changed. You look at the history, the geological history of the world. It's all changed because of climate. It's changing all the time. The two questions really are: is man contributing more to it now? So that's a valid question to ask. And the second one is there anything man can do to stop the planet's climate from changing? The answer to that is absolutely nothing we can do. We are insignificant on this planet. We cannot change what the planet does. But if we can reduce pollution, then everyone's up for reducing pollution and keeping the environment, healthier, friendlier, greener. So there's things we can do which everybody agrees with. It's when the lunatics take over and start saying, we've got 2 years and then we've got 2 years left to save 8 billion people. It's a climate emergency. People are dying. Ecosystems are failing. And when you ask them, where? They can't tell you anything, point to anything. And it's become an ideology. It's become a replacement for religion. This is the end of times. This is the book of Revelations. This is, if I'm a good person, when the world ends, I'm going to heaven. It's just a new version of that.
The world is always going to heat up. I saw a podcast where the world has always gone in cycles. It heats up, it cools down, etc., etc. I just think climate change is going to be used to further control people's freedoms, as we saw in the last 2-3 years, how our freedoms were wiped away overnight with an announcement. And I feel like that will be used as well. I mean, you've already got taxes for certain emissions coming in certain places. Electric cars being pushed heavy. I have nothing against them. It's just how will they also be used to control people? You know, I feel like all of these things that we're supposed to be worried about are just there to take our freedoms away. And if we're scared, we allow these people to take the freedoms because we think it's for our safety.
Yeah. There was a British politician in the 70s called Tony Benn. He was a Labour politician, very, very clever man. Socialist, but a very clever man. And I was watching an interview on YouTube from the 70s from him, and he said something that just jumped out at me. And so again, this is the 70s. He said, if you want to control the population, keep them afraid and make them stupid. And it's like,
we are living in those times now.
Someone took that advice from the 70s and have been working on this since, because we are afraid now and we are stupid. Our education system's terrible.
Well, I mean, I do think our education system is terrible. It has been for a long time. I think it needs a complete revamp from top to bottom. All it does is produce work employees, and that's it, really. I don't think there's much freedom for people. I don't think it's as bad as America's right now. I think the issues they're going through are not as bad as ours, but when America does something, we soon follow. That's just a trend. We like to copy them. You know, the Black Lives Matter protest was a clear case of that, because they were protesting. We felt like we had to protest. And I actually did some research on you. I saw that you were removed from a charity, I think it was.
Yeah, I was sacked from the charity I founded.
Because you questioned Black Lives Matter, which now I don't know if you've heard of Candace Owens. And she done a whole documentary on how so many scams were involved.
Yeah, there's $50 million missing. Lots of the chapters, the heads of the chapters across the country, many of them have been arrested for paedophilia, gun crime, transporting prostitutes across state lines, fraud. Same in the UK. You know, we're prosecuting a woman at the moment in Bristol, Black Lives Matter, because she raised money. It's gone missing.
Well, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's a court case in Bristol at the moment. The decision's not out yet, so we don't know if she's innocent or guilty. We don't know. She could be innocent, but that's the UK one. It was basically a fraudulent, grifting organisation from the beginning. But the country fell into it because it just seemed like something to support, and especially during lockdown, it was an excuse to leave your flat in the house.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the message of Black Lives Matter. Of course I do. But then when you push that heavily, then you exclude people who feel like they can't get involved. So then they say all lives matter, which they do. And then there's conflict. And again, that's another thing. You've got to separate the whites from the blacks and have everybody divided with that situation. But the craziest thing is, I mean, everybody was on one knee. When I was left leaning, I did the one knee. I thought this was helping everybody. And then you wake up, and then it's just crazy how things are used as virtue signals to certain things. I saw Keir Starmer on one knee. At the time, I was like, yeah, this is great. But now I look back on it, I'm like, why are you doing that? And then you go to the World Cup. America didn't take one knee, but we did when we played them. That's how crazy things are. And I know the situation happened in America, but we felt like it happened in our country, that situation, and it highlighted everything.
And that's because Americans speak English. So we think they're like us. It's a different country, different continent.
And I'm not saying you don't experience racism in these countries. Of course, you experience racism everywhere, anywhere you go, but then you don't use one situation to then tarnish the rest of the country. Because I do think now we're being brought up in a time where we're being told our country is racist, it's evil.
Yeah. That's been going on for quite a while, and I take the opposite view. The UK, I would argue, is probably one of the least racist countries in the world. And it's been like that for a long time, and most cases of racism in this country now, I feel, are not even racism. It's basically hurty words. You know,
I always say if our country is so racist, then it's probably not safe for left-leaning people to encourage immigration in the first place, because why would you?
why is 100 million people trying to sneak into the country every day if it's a racist cesspit? And it just isn't at all. But my story with Black Lives Matter, I don't know if you got to the end of an article or something, but it was successful. I fought back, and within 5 weeks, I made the board of the charity resign in disgrace, and I got the job back and the charity back.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And I didn't actually know that. I just thought you got removed, and it just further reaffirmed the belief in my mind that cancel culture has more power than freedom of speech at the minute, which I still think it does. But it's very sad that people are scared to say the truth. Like you stood up for something you thought was the truth, and we're all living in our own objective truths now. But people are so scared to say the truth that when you say it, they hate it when you say it. They tell you, "Oh, don't say that, don't say that." I get comments in my YouTube videos when people tell me you're so brave for saying the truth, and it upsets me. We're in a time where it's considered brave to tell the truth. I thought it should just be a normal thing.
That's how the country used to be 20, 30 years ago. You could have discussions in pubs. You could talk about almost anything, and it was acceptable to a certain extent. But now, people speak to me all the time, and they know a lot of this is crazy, but they daren't say anything because they're scared of losing the job, they're scared of losing friends, they're scared of being called a racist or a phobe or an ism. And they're living in constant fear. It's a bit like the Soviet Union. We're forcing people to live a lie, an unreality, and they're going along with it because they're afraid. That does not produce productive citizens.
And I think people that don't stand for it, they just say they do because they don't want to be cast out of a society, because we're social animals. We need to be involved with people, and if we feel like us not agreeing with something is going to isolate us from people, then we're not going to do that, and then we live in a state of conflict, forced compliance. Like having my views, I have noticed people don't like. I have lost a couple of friends, but if I live a lie, that only hurts me and them. So I always encourage the people to say how you feel, because you're gonna die anyway. Do you want to lay on your deathbed wishing you had said something, and now you look back and be like, oh, I should have said that, and really nothing bad's gonna happen. And if somebody does call you a buzzword, it's just because they have nothing else to say. You can say anything now and it's racist or whatever.
Yeah. Uh, Words of violence.
And half the time they don't even know what these buzzwords mean. Like I see videos of people asking people in the street about certain influencers and why they don't like them. Oh, he's misogynistic. What does misogyny mean? They don't know.
Yeah. Or the other one is, can you tell me something they've said that's misogynistic?
Exactly.
Oh,
And
no. I just got told he's misogynistic off my friend's brother's auntie's babysitter.
I think who we know who we're referring to. I think in that situation, I don't know, Andrew Tate. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
caught up with. Yeah, obviously the situation going on with him is quite bad. But when he was at its peak, it just highlighted how people will not even research things and just repeat what other people say.
Hmm. And that happens, and that's always happened. That it's just easier now with social media. We've always been an animal that will denigrate other people and attack their reputation, and we've seen it throughout history. If you look at the Shakespeare play, Richard III is portrayed as a hunchback. He didn't have a hunchback at all in real life. So we've always done these things to ruin someone's reputation. It's just easier now with social media. Let me ask you, I'm going to talk about free speech. So on your YouTube channel, you do almost daily videos. You pick a story of the day, and you talk about, and usually woke, crazy, lunatic, far left stories of these fools. What do you feel are the biggest issues at the moment that you seem to be picking out? So we've talked about free speech. What are the other issues that you're coming across?
It's definitely the indoctrination kids are facing, whether it's entertainment, or social media, or in schools. A lot of my videos, well, I literally recorded one before this about teachers telling kids certain things that they don't need to know about or be told. You got films pushing, like Disney films, pushing certain progressive ideologies that personally I don't want my kids seeing. And it's all in this age of progression. And I feel like once you indoctrinate the kids to believe in something, they're the core reason why it upholds in the future, right? Because if they grow up with a different point of view, your ideologies, well, then don't exist anymore. So I think children are the most vulnerable group right now through this woke nonsense. And when we use the word woke, everybody, it's like a tiring phrase now. It's like it got fatigue attached to it. I feel like when you say woke, but it is a very concerning thing because, I see kids being told in schools they can change their gender and the teachers won't tell the parents. They're being told they can use certain pronouns, etc., etc. And they keep it from the parents. And it's mostly in America, but I do think it just will end up happening here.
It's already happening here. I've had cases online in newspapers in the UK, and I'm not saying there's hundreds of cases here, but there's been cases here where a child at school has changed their name, changed their pronouns, and the parents have no idea. And one parent only found out when the report card or a yearly update was sent home, and she phoned up the school to question, well, who's this kid you're talking about? And she says, oh, it's your child. Or didn't you know they've changed the name, they've changed the pronouns? It goes, it's my child. How dare me find out like this?
That's the crazy. Like we don't take it seriously enough because it's just a one-off case. But then those one-off cases turn into a growing majority of cases. For me, as a parent, to have my child come home with a different gender that teacher has told them they're allowed to have, that concerns me.
Yeah. I mean, I've been working with young people for over 2 decades. I'm a bit of a safeguarding expert. I've had paedophiles arrested, I've had paedophiles prosecuted, I've saved maybe 15 girls and one boy from being raped and abused. All separate incidents. This wasn't a gang thing. So I understand this topic, and I say to people all the time, the number one thing you have to do if you want to sexually abuse a child, the first thing you have to do is you've got to teach that kid to start keeping secrets. And that's what this agenda is doing in school. If a teacher is telling a child, we're not telling your parents and keep this to yourself. I'm not saying these teachers are paedophiles or abusing these children at all, but this is a strategy paedophiles use to get control of a child. Start keeping secrets, and those secrets always start small. Here's a Mars bar. Don't tell anybody where you got it from, and you build up from there. And that's why this is a safeguarding issue, because we're making children vulnerable to the evil paedophiles that are out there in society.
I mean, not only that, but kids are so impressionable. If you tell them for long enough the sky is red, soon enough, a group of them will start to believe you.
Oh yeah, and there's an age-old saying on this, which is I can't remember where it's from now, but it's give me a boy till he's 7, and I'll show you the man. Meaning, if I can have a child up to 7 years old, I've now convinced that boy for the rest of his life what I wanted to convince him of, because they're so impressionable, because they're learning and they're like a sponge up to that point. They're sucking everything in to find out what the world is really like.
But the point is, it's more controversial for you to sit there and say those words than it is to agree with it. That's the madness we're in. You sticking up for kids or young adults, growing adults, is more controversial than saying, yeah, you know what, I actually agree with the stuff they're being told. And I always get told, the thing that annoys me is I always get told I'm exaggerating these situations by people, like in my real world, people are like, oh no, that doesn't really happen. You're just exaggerating things. I'm like, no, it does happen. And it's getting worse because we're in the age where we're not allowed to offend people as well. You're not allowed, everybody's feelings matter, essentially. And if people are scared to offend people's feelings, are parents even going to question if their kid comes home and says, I'm a different gender? I don't think they do. I think parents are terrible these days. If I'm on it, that's controversial, but I do feel like the parents don't really have any control over their kids, and maybe some don't want any.
Parents these days want to be their child's best friend and don't want to be a parent. I want my child to love me and we can go out clubbing when they're older. Your child has friends. They need parents. They don't need any more friends.
I mean, it's
Sorry, I'm getting
that's all
over
right.
a chest infection.
And it's not even kids in schools. I mean, we could talk about social media. The accessibility and the ease of it is crazy. Like you, TikTok is everybody uses it. Everybody, I know everybody uses it, but for me, it's one of the most dangerous apps out there. I personally do feel like that because the way it's being used in the Western countries is completely different to how it's being used in
In China.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in a teenagers for you page now could include somebody twerking, memes, somebody talking about changing their gender, etc., etc. They don't get that in China. So again, I do think it's purposely pushed as well. But when kids are sat there and they're consuming content, and we can talk about how boys were indoctrinated by people like Andrew Tate and how easily they were taken in by that, while kids are easily taken in by things like doing certain things to their body, going to getting surgery and stuff like that.
Things like self-harm, anorexia, all these are issues that are contagious online. You see people doing it, and then especially girls are very susceptible to peer pressure and to this groupthink. Hence why a lot of this is happening. Again, social media hasn't created this. Social media has just enabled it to be bigger and faster than what was happening before.
It's a symptom of a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not. I carry on. I don't know what you're gonna.
No. Carry on.
All right. I'm not for censorship. I don't like censorship whatsoever because if you give people an inch, they'll take a mile. But there does need to be some sort of regulation on what kids are watching. I truly do believe that 100%.
And we have that already. Films get age categories. Children can't go buy a pornographic magazine. You can't go to a cinema and watch an 18 film when you're 4 years old. We already have those standards in society, but social media, internet is so new. We haven't got round to figuring that out yet, and social media is changing all the time. But we will get there. But it'll take decades. But it's the damage it's going to do within those decades.
And that's the sad thing. And even if you do put age restrictions on things, their parents will just buy it anyway. I remember when I was young, I couldn't play Grand Theft Auto, but I got my mum to buy it for me when I was like 12, 13. So parents will. And I don't know how deep you want to get into the situation with porn, but I do think that's another thing plaguing society and young men very heavily right now.
Yeah, it's too easily accessible. It destroys young men. It stops them trying to build themselves to get relationships, to improve their communication skills and their social skills. It's like, oh, I just go on this app and I'll masturbate online and I don't have to do any of the hard work. And that's part of our problem society. We're looking for quick fixes all the time. So, if we're looking at, young men, well, rather than bettering myself, I can just masturbate. Or a girl will say, well, rather than me trying to lose some weight and be healthier and look prettier, I'll just get some tattoos and dye my hair blue. That'll make me stand out. And we're constantly looking for a quick fix to complicated problems that take time and hard work to achieve.
I think that can just relate to instant gratification. We're living in an instant gratification society where we need everything now. And it's like all these progressive movements, like gender reform bill, they need everything passed now without the long-term consequences considered. It's short-term happiness for long-term pain. But if you got rid of porn, left-leaning people will be like, oh no, you're harming all the sex workers, they need their money. So like it's literally you cannot win anymore, I don't think.
No, I don't think you've been able ever to win. And politicians need to acknowledge that and then go, I'm not going to be popular. No matter what I do, I won't be popular. So do you know what? I'm just going to do the right things because I'm always going to upset a certain amount of the population.
I think our political system also needs a revamp. I like how in America, anyone that has any backing and the amount of money can run to be president. Where in this country, you have to be very by the book. You have to go to university in most cases. You have to know people, and then you might become a politician. And if you look how static people are, like Rishi Sunak, is it any wonder the country isn't galvanized? I watched most of his speeches, and it seems like he's just someone's tuning up something behind him, and then he'll speak. So I think there are a lot of issues that do need fixing, but we're not focused on the right ones.
That's a great segue into my final question. So my final question really is, what's the future for Josh? Is it politics? Is it growing your YouTube channel? Do you just want to be a commentator on these issues? Or do you want to roll your sleeves up and do you want to get your hands dirty and do you want to help solve some of these problems yourself?
This is very deep now. Ever since I was young, I've always wanted to be a YouTuber when I was like 10, 11, 12. I've always wanted to do it. And I am doing it now. But in my head, I think to myself, there's only so much you can do. So I think to myself, maybe I do want to go into politics, but then I have the same thought. And I said this in a video yesterday. Would I even be allowed? This is the thing. Because my views are so different to what the mainstream is right now. I just don't think I would be allowed in, and my conscience would play a big part because what politicians do a lot of the time I don't agree with. And I think to myself, would I do something that I don't personally agree with that would harm people in the long term? Yeah.
I think you could be a politician. There's nothing holding you back. There's some parties you couldn't join because they probably won't let you in, and if they'd let you in, you'd end up leaving within weeks because, I'm basically talking about the Green Party, Labour Party, Lib Dems. Forget them. But, you could look at one of the new parties like Reform UK. I stood for them a couple of years ago. I'm not a member anymore now, but, there's some other small parties out there. You could stand for them. You could stand as an independent. There's ways of doing things. I think I wouldn't denigrate the fact that you've got a YouTube channel because I think your YouTube channel is the media of the future. So you've got a big platform. Your platform's growing. You've got 25,000 subscribers now on YouTube. That's a decent amount.
That's insane.
Exactly. So you've got a platform. It would, if you join a political party, the thing you need to realize is you're basically in a coalition. You're not going to get everything you want, and there'll be things you're going to have to say to the party. I don't agree with those policies really, but the deal I'll do with myself is I'll shut my mouth on those policies. I'm not going to promote them, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut. But these policies, I'm going to push these hard. So there's always horse trading in political parties. Otherwise, you're going to have a party of one, which is you. There's only ever going to be you who agrees with everything you think and say.
That's true.
So that's the compromise you need to make. And then if you're thinking deep down inside, I don't want to make compromises because, that's going against what I believe. If you can't make compromises, then you can't be a politician because politics is all about making compromises. And how you sell that to yourself is, if I can do some good on these topics, that helps society. You can't fight every battle and win every war. You've got to pick the battle you want to fight.
And that's an issue, like, aside from politics, etc. That's just an issue I face in my general life. I am too competitive for my own good. I have to win at everything. So if I was to join, say, Reform and be a part of that, I'd only want to join if I knew my efforts are going to be rewarded with a win, because otherwise for me it's pointless. And I don't know how popular Reform is. Maybe you know more about that than me. You probably do. You probably know people as well. So those are just things, but I just feel compelled to do something, not maybe become a politician, I don't know, but something that is going to change the life for people in some way, whether it be more control over what kids are being taught in school, all those sort of things, because
I think you're already doing it. I think that's what your channel is.
it is, and it's very
It's
good.
getting information out there. It's making people question some of these orthodoxies and these ideologies. Like, you're already doing it.
The only issue is, how long does that last? Because censorship is getting worse every so often. And one of the biggest fears of mine, sometimes I upload a video and I'm scared I'm going to wake up with an email from YouTube saying this video has been taken down. So it's like, how long does that last? And there's no other competing social media platforms to compete with the big tech,
Yeah, I got kicked off Twitter for something just like that, Woke up one day and I got an email afterwards saying your account's permanently banned. Never had a warning before. Other people get 12-hour bans or a week ban. Mine went straight to permanent ban.
Have you not managed to get it back
No,
since?
I've tried, I've appealed twice now since Elon's been back. And I still no go.
I don't know what you must have really said something that annoyed some liberal. It's probably the whole Black Lives Matter thing that
Yeah, well, the post that got me banned was really talking about a Ukrainian woman who came to the. It was a Daily Mail article that she'd sold a story to, so she wasn't an average Joe. You know, she went to the press for this story, and I criticised her for stealing someone else's husband,
and that got you kicked off.
and that got me kicked off.
How long ago was that? A couple of years ago?
No, this was 4 months, 5 months.
4 months ago.
Yeah.
It does scare me that one person can press a button and you're completely gone.
It does, but again, living in fear of something you have no control of isn't worth your energy. All you can do on YouTube is try to be as sensible as you can without bending too much. And if you end up having your account banned and kicked off, well, cross that bridge when you come to it.
It's just when I see it happen to other creators, obviously it goes into your mind and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that, you know.
It's about being clever. It's about playing their game, because they don't necessarily want to kick you off because they're going to lose ad revenue if you've got a popular account. But their issue is if we have people who are doing or saying too many crazy things, our advertisers are going to criticize us and say we're not advertising with YouTube anymore because you just put my brand next to a guy who is talking about how he adores Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. You don't do things like that. But that's what they're worried about, that their advertisers walking away. So as long as you play the game sensibly, and I've seen your videos are all very sensible. It's not hyperbolic. You're not, criticizing people and, spewing hate out there. You're having serious conversations on your videos. You just need to be sensible, and that's all you can do. And don't worry about something you have no influence over.
I'm already calculated as to what I do and do not say anyway.
Of course.
So that's the thing as well. Like, YouTube's a great platform and I love it so much, and I'm achieving my childhood dream, as we spoke about earlier. But as things go further and further, I can't say more and more things. Like, there are issues I do want to talk about that have happened in the last 2-3 years that really we're not even allowed to talk about now, which is a scary thought. I see people talk about it and they get removed, etc., which I question, why do they get removed in the first place? So,
but like I said, I've seen many of your videos now, and I think you're a talented YouTuber.
oh, thank you.
I think you come across great on those videos. You hit the topics just right. Enough of you. There's enough time you talking. There's enough of time watching what you're talking about, different people's videos and stuff. I think you hit it just right. And the fact you've got 25,000 followers, and the fact you've got a friend of mine at 56 saying to me, "You need to check out this young lad. What a great guy he is on YouTube," means you're doing something right. So I would carry on down the path you're doing now and see what opportunities start presenting themselves to you in the future.
Be as critical as you can. Give me how you would want me to improve. One thing. I always ask people because I'm always up for improving. I feel like.
On your YouTube channel, there's no advice I could give you because I'm new to YouTube. I've only been really working on my YouTube channel for about 4 months. So I'm trying to learn myself. There's nothing I can tell you on that. I think the only advice I could give you is life in general. Your quest in life, because I seem to understand what you're trying to do. You want to improve society for the next generation coming along. You're trying to leave the world a better place than when you found it. And for that, I think the advice is you just need to be true to yourself. Don't get carried away with the ego side of things, which we all fall into because we're all susceptible to that, myself included. Look how many likes that video got. Look how much money I earned on that video. If I start saying more controversial things, it's going to push this up and that up, because then you're not being true to yourself. Then you're basically being an entertainer. Nothing wrong in being an entertainer if that's what you want to be. But if you're trying to be more than that and you're trying to influence society you live in, then you need to be truthful and honest to yourself. And as long as you stick to that, then you won't go far wrong, and you won't fail. Even if people want you to fail and people take away your channel or take away that. And even if they did that, you haven't failed because you were true to yourself.
That is, see, these are the sort of conversations I love. You know, politics is great to talk about, but when you get into this, that's the sort of stuff, you know, it's great to talk about.
No, fantastic. Thank you, Josh, for coming on my little podcast compared to yours. I really enjoyed chatting to you. Keep up the good work, because a lot of the feedback I get off people is there's too many older people having these conversations, you know, like me. There's too many people of, you know, over 30, over 40 having these conversations. All the young people are woke, all the young people are a lost cause, and you're a great example that isn't the case. And we need more people like you talking to younger people, showing them the error of their ways and helping them come to the right conclusions. And the right conclusions may not be my conclusions, but do you know what? If they've got to that through evidence and information and experience, well, I'm glad for them. I just don't want people living a lie and living on reality. So carry on what you're doing. And I'm going to look forward to watching your videos and watching your channel grow and grow and grow and grow.
And I appreciate your platform. I think what you're doing is also great. You know, it's nice to see other people talking about it. It can get isolating at times because you feel like you're the only one with your views and everybody else has got a different one.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think what you're doing is great, and it's great you managed to get your charity back. I'm very happy about that. That makes me happy.
Thank you. And if you ever need a guest on your podcast, just let me know. I'm happy to go on other people's podcasts.
That'll be great. Thank you so much for today.
I'll speak to you soon, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And you. See you later, my friend.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.